Okay. So I'll wait for the message to come on. Brilliant. Okay, so welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. It's fantastic to have Joe Prescott from Glyndwr University, and she's going to talk about the role of the probation officer, and she's also going to talk about the courses that she has at Glyndwr University. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat, and we might do some Q&A at the end. But if you think of a question, sometimes you don't have to wait, put them in the chat, and I will obviously take note of that, and at the end we can do all the questions. So I'm going to mute my mic, Joe, so you can get feedback. But I'm there and I'm going to be listening. So I'm going to hand over to Joanne now.
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. So my name is Dr. Joe Prescott. I am a lecturer on the Criminology and Policing degrees at Glyndwr University. And today what I'm going to talk to you about, firstly, is some of the courses that we have at Glyndwr University. But on top of that, what I want to address is some of the vocational aspects of doing a degree with us at Glyndwr University. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a go at an activity which gives you the ability to be a probation officer for the day. So probation services are a very popular route for many of our graduates at Glyndwr University, particularly those who go for the criminology degree. And what they find is this job gives them an enormous amount of reward because they're working with very high-risk offenders on a day-to-day basis. And the rewards involved are actually them being able to assist that person to lead a better and more pro-social, law-abiding life. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm just going to share my PowerPoint with you. And what I would say is if you've got a pen and a piece of paper handy, that would be useful for today's session, because we are going to have a case study example towards the end of the session, which basically gives you the ability to think like a probation officer and apply some of the knowledge that I'm going to give you to a case study. So if you have a pen and paper handy, that's going to be really useful so you can jot down some of your answers. And also likewise, if you've got any questions or queries throughout the session, then please just raise your virtual hand and I'll try and address those. Or you might want to put some of your questions in the bubble, the chat bubble at the top of the screen there. And again, we can have a look at those towards the end of the session. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with you now. Okay, hopefully you can see the main screen.
Yeah, that's fine, Joe. We can see that.
Okay. So, as I say, my name's Dr. Joe Prescott. I have been a lecturer at Glyndwr University now for, gosh, coming up for 4 years. So I initially was a student actually at Glyndwr University, so I did my own degree there and in criminology. I then went on to do teacher training also at Glyndwr University, and whilst I was doing my teacher training, I enrolled to do a PhD, so a doctorate as well, which I've completed now, and then went for a role as a lecturer on the criminology degree that I actually studied on. So just a little bit of some detail there. So in terms of today's workshop, what we're going to do is just explore some of the various professions that are on offer within the public sector and also within the wider criminal justice system. And I think what's interesting about this is that many potential students that come to us at Glyndwr, they're not quite aware of just how broad and widespread the criminal justice system actually is. And what they don't realise is there is a widespread variety of jobs that you can think about going into within the criminal justice system. So thinking about a degree at Glyndwr University with criminal justice and criminology is a really good opportunity, really, because it opens up a lot of doors in terms of job prospects. So in addition to today's workshop, we're also going to discuss the skills and competencies needed to work within the public sector and also across the criminal justice system also. We're then going to explore the opportunities on offer at Glyndwr University, and there'll be a specific focus here on the criminology and criminal justice programme, because as I say, this degree programme is really the one if you're not too sure where it is you want to go with your careers, but you do know that you have an interest in working with people within the criminal justice system. As I said before, the criminology degree really does open doors to a variety of jobs, and that's what we're going to look at today. And then finally, you're going to have that taster. As I said before, you're going to look at a case study and apply some of the techniques that probation officers would ordinarily use in their day-to-day jobs when they're assessing offending behaviour. So a little bit of background history on myself. As I say, I studied at Glyndwr University, so I have many fond memories of being on campus. It was a very, very enjoyable experience, and I must admit, you know, I've made some lifelong friends whilst I studied at Glyndwr, and it's set me up for life. As I say, now I'm a lecturer on the same programme that I studied on, so that just gives you an indication of the variety of jobs that you can go into off the back of a criminology degree. So much so, I think, you know, it's such a widespread degree that it opens doors in a variety of areas, not just the criminal justice system. So in terms of my expertise, I have a widespread interest in prisons. So my PhD thesis was actually conducted at HMP Berwyn, which is the largest prison in England and Wales. It's actually our local prison at Wrexham. So I actually conducted a qualitative piece of research there where I went into the prison and actually spent, I'd say probably about 2 months in the prison every day with the residents, with the staff, getting to know the environment. And what I was looking at predominantly within that research was the rehabilitative process that they actually adopt at HMP Berwyn. So it was really quite an eye-opener. And I think in terms of prisons, that's probably what drives me the most, is this idea that we need to change our prison systems and move away from this kind of punitive stance that we tend to see across the prison estate, and look at how we can be much more focused on individuals, focused on those prisoners as individuals, as people, and hopefully, you know, help them to turn their lives around. So that just gives you some insight into my research expertise. I also have expertise in prison education, so I have taught in prisons as well. Again, this was HMP Berwyn in Wrexham. I did a introductory course there with some of the prison residents and gave them some of the threshold concepts, the sort of basics surrounding higher education and how to study at that level. And in addition to that, we were also encouraging them to think about, you know, potentially doing degrees themselves. So using education as a way to kind of change and rehabilitate. In addition to that, I also have a background in restorative justice. So I completed some volunteer work many years back now with the Youth Justice Service, and that was looking at restorative practices. So things like mediation, getting people together, victims with the offender, and having them, you know, talk things out. So that mediation process is very successful across the criminal justice system. And then finally there, you'll see that I have an interest in homelessness. That interest stems from my personal career. So prior to going to university to study, I actually set up a pilot project for a homeless shelter in Wrexham. So we're going back to 2007 now. So those are kind of my research expertise and my interests. And as you can see, they're quite varied as well. Now, just to give you a little bit more on my background, I've also have a background in mental health nursing, residential youth work, the pilot project, which I've just mentioned with the homeless night shelter, and then obviously my education areas of expertise there, which we've already touched on. So I won't spend too much time on going over my background, but what I want to do now is just look at why criminology. Why is it that you might potentially think about going into a degree at Glyndwr in criminology? So as it says there, studying criminology and criminal justice at degree level opens up a variety of career opportunities, many of which are located in the public services. So things like police, probation, the courts, the prison service, housing as well, and also things like youth offending. These all come within that umbrella term of, you know, public services. And so, as I said before, there are a wide variety of jobs on offer within the criminal justice system. And having a degree such as this, it gives you that expertise, that knowledge to start thinking about those jobs when you graduate. Now, as it says there, whilst there are many public sector jobs available, they are highly competitive, and therefore it's really quite imperative that you consider a degree which meets the entry requirements for your chosen career. And I think sometimes that's a common mistake with many students. They don't really navigate or understand what a degree can offer them. So it's important that if you have a career opportunity or career that you've got in mind, that you ensure that you have the right degree in place to meet some of the objectives and the requirements of that job. So let's move on now to just look at some of the potential areas that you might consider working in within the criminal justice system. So we have a few here. So at the top left-hand corner there, we have the prison service. The prison service extends to the youth estate, also the female estate and the male estate. So again, there's a lot of opportunities in terms of which area within the prison service you might consider working in. Then in the middle there, we have the courts. And again, this is made up of the magistrates court and the Crown Court. And then higher up, we have the High Court. So particularly with the court, many of our students may consider going into law or criminology and law. So we do have 2 degree programmes at the moment that we run at Glyndwr University, and that's the Criminal Justice and Law programme and also the Law programme. But in addition to that, the Criminology degree is also well suited to anybody that's looking in the area of law. So next we have on the right there the police force. Now at Glyndwr we do operate a new degree, or I say new, it's in its 3rd year now, but we do have a professional policing degree programme. So that's something that I would certainly recommend to any potential students who strictly want to go down the route of becoming a police officer. However, if you're not too sure, then perhaps I think the criminology degree is more suited to those potential students who really haven't established where they want to be yet. Then in the bottom left hand corner we have the probation service, and as I said before, that's going to be our main focus today. Now the probation service is a very good route, a very popular route in fact, and we have a number of graduates from Glyndwr who have actually gone on to become probation officers, some of those within the community and also some of those within the prison service as well. So there is a lot of scope in terms of probation services. It's a hugely rewarding career, and as I say, we have a lot of our students that decide to go into that career. Then finally there we have to the bottom right the youth justice service, and again this is also a very popular one with a lot of our students, and that is because again it's such a rewarding career. You know, it's so good to be able to turn around the lives of those young people and hopefully, you know, navigate them away and direct them away from the criminal justice system before any kind of damage can be done. So all of these jobs, as you can see here, have a number of similarities, and that is that they are all jobs that require you to have very good communication skills. They also require you to have people skills as well, and a general empathy and understanding for the concerns of society and of individuals. And so what we always say to potential students is that something that interests you? Working with others, supporting others, helping others, you know, is that something that you're encouraged to do, and possibly one of your aspirations? And then I think in terms of this also, some of these jobs require you to have much more soft skills, so transferable skills. So things like, you know, punctuality, time management, critical thinking, decision making, academic skills as well are always useful, and you'll take a lot of those skills from your degree. And all of these kind of things can be imported into your job, and therefore this is one of the ways that we create our curriculum at Glyndwr. We're mindful of those skills that you're going to need once you get your job within the criminal justice system, and so we try and you know, build that into the curriculum and ensure that students have those skills, and ensure that basically they're practice ready and ready to go out and start applying for those jobs and hopefully be successful in gaining employment. Okay, so let's move on. So what I want to just talk to you briefly about here is, you know, why you might potentially think of choosing Glyndwr University as a place for study. And so I think we're in a very exciting time at Glyndwr University, and that is because we are rapidly rising up through the league tables. So each year our grades, if you like, the response that we get from these league tables is improving. And as I say, we are, rapidly rising through the ranks as one of the most upcoming universities in Wales and also in the UK. So, I mean, you can see that there from one of the results that we've had this year, and that's in the Guardian University Guide. So we actually came second in the UK overall, and that's across all universities in the UK for teaching satisfaction. And I mean, that's just one of our more significant achievements. But if you were to look across the board at all of our degrees, you will see that our disciplines all have done very, very well in terms of the league tables. In addition to that, we're also investing a lot in our student experience. So what we're doing is investing lots of money within the campus itself to make the campus engaging, inviting, and an enjoyable place to be. So you may have seen this perhaps in the newspapers, on the news, that we're investing quite a bit of money on things like the campus itself and the resources and facilities. So this is called our Campus 2025 project. And what we have in place is a number of very rejuvenated, refreshed areas within the campus that are all very student friendly, student focused, and basically designed in a way to make your time at Glyndwr much more enjoyable. So in addition to that, I just want to touch on this as well. So, it may be the case that you're coming from out of county to study with us. And so you might be considering, why Wrexham? Why would you choose to come to Wrexham to do your degree? Again, Wrexham is up and coming. We've got a lot of exciting things going on in our town, and we're very proud at Glyndwr to say that we are, neighbours now to the Wrexham Football Club, and neighbours with, as we can see here in the picture, we've got Rob McElney and obviously Ryan Reynolds there. So we are working closely with the football club. We have actually had Rob and Ryan on campus doing some filming. So, exciting times, and I'm sure you can agree that it's something that Wrexham can be proud of, an up and coming area with lots going on. So certainly one to consider in terms of studying. And I think as well, the location of Glyndwr, it's suitably placed. So we are obviously on the border between sort of Chester and Wrexham. So we have very good network links between Chester, Wrexham, Liverpool, all very good links with the rail, and buses are also very frequent as well to the university. So in terms of our location and locality, Wrexham is very well placed. So moving on then, I just want to reiterate some of the degree programmes that we have on offer. And this is just so that you are aware of what we potentially offer the students and, some of those opportunities that you might choose to take if you do come to study with us. So the first one we have there is the BA Honours Criminology and Criminal Justice degree. And as I said before, that's predominantly what I'm going to be talking about today. But in addition to that, we have the Law and Criminal Justice degree. Then we have the new law degree. So this is a brand new degree at Glyndwr. So we're in our first year of running that programme, and it's already proving very, very popular with the current students on that degree. And finally there we have the professional policing degree, which is in its third year. So lots of variety there in terms of the degree programs that we offer. The degrees are also very flexible, so some are run on a part-time basis and others full-time. So again, that just gives you some indication of what's out there. So let's just take a look at criminology and criminal justice at Glyndwr. So as you can see there, the duration is 3 years for a full-time degree or 6 years for a part-time degree. The entry level here is 2022. However, that might be different for yourselves depending on where you are currently in your studies. You have your UCAS code there if you were interested in studying with us, and also the UCAS tariff. And then the institution code is G53, and obviously we're based in Wrexham. So as I pointed out previously in the last slide, we have had a number of big achievements, particularly on the criminology and criminal justice degree. So the first one there is we're actually first in the UK for student satisfaction. So we're very proud of that, actually. It's a real accomplishment, and it's testament, I think, to the expertise across the discipline, across the criminal justice degree, but also testament to our students. They really make the degree, that they really enjoy the studying, and they make it what it is. They help us to achieve these excellent grades. We're also first in the UK for teaching quality, and that's according to the Times and Sunday Times Good University Guide for this year. And we are also first in Wales overall in criminology, again in the Guardian University Guide. So, you know, as I said before, I think those results really speak volumes. It gives our potential students, our prospective students, an idea of what we're actually doing at Glyndwr University in terms of the criminology degree. You know, we're investing an awful lot in our students, in the programme, in the curriculum to make it the very best that it can be. And so when we're hitting these firsts in league tables, you know, it's really quite satisfying because it helps us, you know, to recognise that we are on the right tracks and that the students are taking a lot from this degree. Now, to help you understand the degree programme in a little bit more detail, what I want to do is just talk to you about the teaching methods and the method of delivery. So in terms of the criminology and criminal justice degree at Glyndwr, we operate currently on a blended learning. And this is something actually that we've always done. So, you know, obviously things at the moment are very different because of the COVID situation and obviously the pandemic that we're just coming out of and lockdown and all those sorts of things. However, we have always operated in a blended way. So the criminology degree programme at Glyndwr is a very flexible option for many students, and that is because we have days where we'll have students on campus. So it tends to be 1 or 2 days a week that you'll be in your first year. That might differ slightly in the second and third year, but you'll never be in every day. So it's very, very flexible in that regard. In addition to that, you'll also have some online modules also. So what we find with this approach, this blended approach, is that it's incredibly flexible for those students who have busy lives. And what we find is our students are coming to us at Glyndwr because it enables them to still have a life. You know, they can still have a social life, they can do their studies, they can even still hold down a job, a part-time job. So having that flexible approach at Glyndwr basically means that our students are able to dedicate their time to their learning, but also, you know, feel that they have a complete life, a social life, and all of those other things that are really meaningful and important. So the way that we operate this blended learning approach is through our active learning framework. And basically what this means is we have, as I say, lectures on campus face to face, but also lectures that are delivered online. So you'll have a good variety of teaching resources and, you know, variety of different teaching methods, which really help to make the degree engaging and interesting. And I think, you know, in this modern time, in the current climate and the way that things are at the moment, that really is, you know, something that students are looking towards right now when they're picking a degree programme. So just want to give you a quick overview on the team. So basically here we have our senior lecturers. So we have Dr. Caroline Hughes, and she's Associate Dean for the university. Then we have Dr. Sarah Doubley. She is the programme leader for the Criminology and Criminal Justice degree. She's also a principal lecturer. Next we have Professor Yolo Maddock-Jones. He is a senior lecturer and is focused predominantly on the research side of things. So Yolo tends to lead on many of our research projects, and also supports many of our postgraduate students, PhD students, and also has quite a lot of involvement in Year 3 studies as well on the undergraduate degree. Next, we've got Dr. Caroline Gordon, and she's a senior lecturer and reader on the criminology programme. And then over the page, we have Dr. Karen Washington-Dyer, who is a programme leader for the Masters in Criminology, then myself, and then finally Tegan Briley-Solis, who is also a lecturer. So let's look now at what you would study if you decided to come to us and do the Criminology and Criminal Justice degree. So students will study criminology from a range of perspectives, including the social, political and psychological effects of crime. So as you can see there, it's a very, very broad and wide area, and we'll look at some of the structural determinants, some of the social factors, all of those things that can really influence and affect offending behaviour. Next, we'll look at examining criminal law and the workings of magistrates and the Crown Courts. So students will get a really good understanding of how the criminal justice system operates, and that will be from the base up. So starting at the Crown Court, you'll also look at things like the Crown Prosecution Service and the way that these cases are brought to court, and all of that involvement that things like the police service have, you know, in the wider areas within the criminal justice system, how it all sort of feeds together and knits together. So you'll get a really good understanding of those workings within the criminal justice system. So as it says there, again, explore the roles and responsibilities of each of these agencies that make up the modern criminal justice system. And you will learn that predominantly in year one. So you'll have an introductory lecture and module with myself, which looks predominantly at understanding the criminal justice system. Next, you'll acquire knowledge from visiting lecturers such as judges, police, probation and youth justice staff. And that's actually one of the things we really pride ourselves on the degree programme, and that is the excellent networks and working links that we have with the wider criminal justice system and with some of those key professionals. So what we're always trying to do within the degree programme is give you that insight into the, you know, professional lives of these individuals by getting them into the university to do guest lectures. And, you know, the reports from our students are very good in this regard. And what they say is they really enjoy, you know, that variety. They enjoy having judges, you know, police officers, those people who are actually on the coalface working out in these fields. They enjoy having them in class, you know, explaining what the role entails, and, you know, just kind of giving them some general insight into that type of career. So, as I said before, a lot of students that come to us are not aware of the variety of posts and positions and careers that there are, you know, when you've actually completed a degree in criminal justice. So, as I mentioned before, you know, this degree opens up a number of doors, firstly to those sort of primary public services, so the police, probation, prison, courts and the like, but also wider than that, much wider than that, in fact. So the criminology degree opens doors to places like alcohol and substance misuse and addiction services. So we have a number of students who have gone into, tends to be third sector, so the voluntary sector, and they're supporting people within those areas. Then we have things like victim support. There's also mental health services. So there are a broad variety of areas that you could go into in terms of mental health services. Then there's things like hostel work or approved premises. So approved premises are what we know as bail hostels, and they tend to be places where people will be released from prison and reside in a bail hostel as part of their licence conditions. So again, a lot of our students go into that kind of work, and that's another area that we have very good working links with at the university. Some students might choose to go into housing support. There's also things like human trafficking and modern day slavery. So again, we have a fantastic third sector link that we work closely with at the university, and that is BAUSO. They're located in Wrexham, and they predominantly look at supporting people who have been trafficked, and also individuals going through domestic violence. So we have a number of students working in that area, and it is a very sensitive area, but by doing the degree with us, those students feel, you know, suitably equipped to, you know, meet the needs of the people that they work with. Next, you've got things like UK Border Force, so that's becoming quite a popular one for a lot of our students. Domestic violence services as well, many jobs on offer within that field, and again, a lot of our students do go into that area. Homeless services, and then also wider third sector working as well. So I mean, that is just a sample. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and I think what it does is it just gives you some indication of what's out there in terms of jobs. And as I said before, I think a lot of students are not aware of just how widespread the criminal justice system is, and they tend to have this very narrow view where they think that if you do a criminology degree, it's only going to get you a job as a police officer, a probation officer, or, you know, job in a prison. But that's not the case at all. There are, you know, many careers that you can think about going into once you have a criminology and criminal justice degree. So the focus of today then is going to be probation. Now, this may be a career that you've thought about yourself. It may be something that interests you. And so what we're going to today is just take a little bit of a look into probation and try and understand what the career entails, but also, just understand what a rewarding position it is to have, and just how influential you can be if you go into the probation service. So the criminology degree at Glyndwr combines some of the applied academic learning and practical skills development, which will ensure that you are fully equipped to work with people who have offended. So you'll see within our curriculum that much of what we do and what we cover is very much guided towards helping you understand why people commit crime. And so we'll look at that from a criminological perspective. We'll also look at it from a forensic psychology perspective. We'll also look at it from a more theoretical perspective as well. So you'll get a broad understanding of, the motivations of offending, why people commit crime, and what actually drives them to that position. And hopefully by knowing that, then you'll be suitably equipped to help those individuals. So, as I said before, many of our graduates have secured employment as probation officers and also as probation service officers. So that's slightly a lower level. So you don't need as much training to do a probation service officer role, but it's equally as rewarding. So you have the two levels there that you could potentially go into if you were thinking about becoming a probation officer. And as I pointed out before, there are jobs within the probation service which extend to company rehabilitation companies. So that's working with sort of low-level offenders, or you might go into the National Probation Service and they're working with sort of mid-range and high-risk offenders. So, on a day-to-day basis as a probation officer, you could come across a variety of offences, right from things like, high-risk offenders, so it could be sex offences, murder, all of those sorts of things are considered high risk, right down to some of the lower-level offences, which could be something like, theft, arson, burglary, all those sorts of things. So as I say, you'll come across a variety of risks and different crimes in terms of your client group. But the key thing to remember here is your degree will give you the skills and the capacity to know how to address these people and how to work with and support them. So in terms of the entry requirements for probation, what you basically need is a relevant degree. So the criminology and criminal justice degree is just that. It's a relevant degree which is recognised by the probation service. Now, what we've actually done is work closely with the probation service to make sure that our learning outcomes map across to the probation service, so that when our graduates do decide to go into probation and apply for those jobs, it just ensures that they are prepared for that, and obviously that they are meeting the requirements of the job. And so hopefully that gives them much more of a better chance in securing that employment. So on successful completion of your degree at Glyndwr, students are eligible to apply for the 15-month professional qualification in probation. So basically, if you do decide to go into probation, you'd obviously complete your degree with us in criminology and criminal justice. You then apply to the probation service, and if you're successful and you get in, you would then do this 15-month PQIP, as they call it. So this is a paid training program that the probation service run. It lasts 15 months, and at the end of that you come out with that qualification, and then you are practice ready and ready to start taking caseloads and supporting people in the criminal justice system. So as you can see, a very rewarding career, and something that is certainly one for consideration. So that brings me now to our probation officer task. So what I have for you here today is a case study. Now, this is a fictitious case study. It's, been made up. I've generated this myself. However, it's important to note that some of the points that you read in this case study over the next 4 slides, these are very real points. These are things that happen quite frequently with a lot of the people that come in and out of the justice system. And these are these criminogenic risk factors. So these things that might encourage a person to commit crime. So what we're going going to do is we're going to have a look at this case study. And what I want you to do is I just want you to grab that paper and pen that I reminded you of at the beginning of the session. And I just want you to make notes of any criminogenic risk factors. So these are things that might cause Carl to reoffend. So anything that really jumps out at you as being a risk factor, something that might encourage him or force him down that route of reoffending, I want you to just jot that down. And what we can do is we can have a, we'll share some of these at the end of the session and just, go through some of your answers. And then in addition to that, whilst you're kind of thinking about the case study, what I want you to do is also think about ways that you, as his probation officer, might be able to support him. So whilst you are ascertaining those criminogenic risk factors, just think about what levels of support, what it is that you as your probation officer could potentially do to help support him and hopefully keep him out of the justice system and going back into the prison system. So let's start by looking at the first slide. And what I'll actually do is read these out to you, and then we'll just have a moment for you to kind of reflect on the slide and jot down any answers in terms of those things that you think could, encourage him or force him into offending. So in the first slide here, let's begin the case study. So Carl is 25 years old. He lives with his older brother, Stephen, who is married with 2 children, all of which live in the same household. Conditions in his brother's home are not ideal, and Carl is having to sleep on the sofa and be up and out of the house before the children wake up, as Stephen, his brother, says he should be actively looking for work and is a bad influence on the children, and therefore doesn't want him sat around doing nothing all day. Carl has just been released from prison, having just served 3 years for a drugs offence. He's been out of jail for 2 weeks and is already finding things very difficult. Carl would like to be a forklift truck driver, but hasn't got any qualifications or work experience. Carl has not been able to find paid employment in the 2 weeks that he's been released from prison and is beginning to get bored of looking for work. Now, I'm just going to give you a moment to reflect on that first slide. And what I want you to do is just think about any potential criminogenic risk factors that you can see within this first slide that might push Carl down that route of reoffending. So if there's anything that stands out there as being a potential risk, then just jot that down on your piece of paper. So I'll just give you a moment just to reflect on that. Okay, let us move on. We can come back to these slides later on if you need to revisit them. Let's look at slide 2 now in terms of the case study. So to compound matters further, Carl does not have any form of income as his benefits have not been paid. Carl has another 2 weeks to wait before he gets any form of income from the benefits office. Carl doesn't have any hobbies, but enjoys spending time with his friend who he met in prison, Tim. Now, Tim has been out of prison for 1 month, and Carl is thinking of moving in with Tim and setting up their own business. They haven't yet decided on what this business might entail, but want to make as much money as possible in the least amount of time. So again, I'm just going to give you a little bit of time for reflection. What things really jump out at you there in terms of risk factors, those criminogenic things which could increase Carl to go out and commit crime? I'll just give you a moment with that. Okay, so just have a think about some of those criminogenic risk factors and how you might potentially be able to help him as well. Those are all really quite important points. So let's move on to the next slide. Carl has never had a job, and before going into prison was a prolific offender with a history of petty theft and minor drug charges. Carl struggles to read and write and claims that most of his offending behaviour is due to his poor education. He also finds it difficult to manage his money and is apprehensive of how he might manage his benefits when they finally get paid, as he feels that he may just blow them all in one go. Apart from his brother, Carl has nobody that he can rely on. He also feels that his brother's patience is wearing thin and that his brother may throw him out anytime soon. In addition to this, Carl does not have any contact with his mother or father, who both disowned him when he stole money from them to buy drugs and designer clothes. So again, just going to give you a moment of reflection to pick out some of those things which may cause Carl to reoffend. Okay, this is now the fourth and final slide within the case study. Carl feels lonely and depressed a lot of the time, and when he's not with his friend Tim, he often feels that life in prison was much easier. He felt like he was a somebody in prison, and now he's out, it's difficult for the world to notice him and for him to make any sort of valuable contribution. Carl also believes that the authorities are out to get him and has a very unhealthy view of the police, stating that the next police officer to lay their hands on him will get it. So this is our final slide, so I'll just give you a moment again just to reflect on it and to consider some of those areas which you see within this narrative here that could be potential risk factors and could encourage Carl to reoffend. Okay, so we're going to stop there. So hopefully from that case study, you have been able to jot down some rough notes on some of those key criminogenic risk factors, and we can have a chat about those at the end of the session. So what we're going to do now is look at some of the potential answers that you might have gotten. So we're going to kind of strip it back and really analyse the case study, and we're going to look at it through the lens of a probation officer and basically look at it in terms of how they might assess the offenders that they come into contact with on a daily basis. So in terms of probation services, the things that they're going to be looking for whenever they look to support people within the probation service is what we call the big 8. So these are the sort of primary things that most probation officers will be looking to pick up on whenever they're doing assessments on their caseload of individuals. So they're going to look at things like antisocial personality or a history of offending. So, you know, with example of Carl, for instance, we read there that he was a prolific offender. So he has a back catalogue of, you know, existing offences that he's committed. And so probation officers would be looking at that as a potential criminogenic risk factor. They'd be looking at the risk of him desisting, or recidivism as well, is a term that we use in the criminology degree. And that is this idea that people will either desist, so move away from crime, or they will reoffend. So that is recidivism. So this is one of the things that, probation officers are going to pick up on. They're going to look at antisocial tendencies and also that history of offending. And that's going to be a big red flag to them, actually. If they see that there is that extensive history of offending behaviour, then it's an indicator that that might happen again. They're also going to look at things like antisocial cognition. So that's the way in which a person thinks, the way in which a person applies thought processes. So consequential thinking, the way that they, map out their life through the decisions and the thought processes that they use. Then they're going to look at things like antisocial companions. So what we often find within the criminal justice system is one of the biggest drives toward reoffending is actually mixing with the wrong group. So if we think about Carl, if we go back and use that example, we have a big red flag there, and that is the fact that he is starting to mix with antisocial others or antisocial peers. So as we saw in the case study, he has been associating with a friend who he met in prison, Tim. They're thinking of moving in together, and so this could be a real indicator that by him, moving in those circles, mixing with the wrong sorts of people, that he could be persuaded back into that criminal lifestyle. Then we have things like family and or marital stressors. So this again is another indicator within the criminal justice system of those people who potentially could end up reoffending. And that is when they're having particular issues in their family. So when they're lacking stability within the family, or perhaps they're going through a marital breakup and they don't have, a significant other who can guide them and support them. This can all put immense pressure on somebody who is coming out of the prison system. And so this is one of the kind of key things that we see is when people don't have that stability in their life, they don't have a suitable family grounding, this can also, force them back down that route of offending. Then we have substance abuse and misuse. And again, this is a real indicator of potentially those people who are going to commit crime again. And this is quite a big one, in fact. So substance misuse is one of the key criminogenic risk factors that we see within the criminal justice system, and it does tend to predict criminal behaviour. So this is one of the things that probation officers will work to support, and they'll look at potentially having individuals getting that professional help in and around their substance and addiction issues. Then we have lack of employment. And again, we can draw on that within the case study. We can see that Carl was struggling with employment. And again, this is a real breakdown. So when people are leaving the prison system, if they don't have suitable employment set up, then obviously they're going to be reliant on the state. They're going to be reliant on drawing benefits. And again, this puts them in this sort of, this position whereby there is that potential for them to go out and commit crime, usually because of a lack or insufficient funds or income. And so again, not having employment in place or a suitable job can be a real predictor of recidivism and committing crime again. Then we've got a lack of education. This one also is a real concern, and this is one of the things that the probation service would be looking out for. They'd be looking out for those individuals who don't have suitable qualifications, maybe don't have job experience, all that sort of stuff that they need to really, forward themselves and get on in life. And then finally there, we have a lack of pro-social leisure or recreation. Now, what this indicates is, that this individual doesn't really have that engagement with the community. They perhaps don't have leisure activities, hobbies that they can do. And so, again, it kind of throws them into this sort of spiral of depression. It can make them feel that they're very detached from society, very stigmatized, and by not feeling, part of the community and not having those hobbies and things that they enjoy, this again can kind of, reroute them down an offending lifestyle. So that's just kind of an idea of what probation officers would be looking for. And those are, as I said, the kind of the red flags, the things they're going to look out for, those criminogenic risk factors. And again, these might be some of the areas that you picked up on in that case study. So let's move on then to consider how we might help them. So I hope that you were able to reflect on that whilst you were reading through the case study. And probation officers do have a significant amount of skill and expertise in this area, and one of the things that you will learn as a probation officer when you're doing your training is that there are a variety of areas that you can signpost your caseloads to. So if you have a particular offender that you're working with who has, I don't know, significant housing needs, it may not be something that you can deal with, that you can actually suitably manage, but it may be something that, you know, local council could help with, a housing association. And so as a probation officer, you're going to be very aware of those networks. You're going to be able to suitably signpost your caseloads, you know, your supervisees onto the relevant people. And so these are the things that, you know, you be taught within your probation training when you want to do that. And you'll look at things like supervision planning and how you can work closely with offenders to sort of manage their life, really. Also things like work programs. So it could be that you're helping your caseload get onto different training or different vocational areas and get them those programs and expertise and experience that they need. You might be having as well to refer them onto health and wellbeing services. So again, a lot of your caseload within the probation service are going to have very, very complex needs. And those are going to be things like psychological needs, mental health needs, substance misuse and addiction, a variety of things. And so it's important as a probation officer that you know where to direct those people when they need help in those particular areas. Then there's things like arranging educational programs and employment opportunities. So again, there's a real focus on this within the probation service, and this is largely upheld by this idea of rehabilitation. So probation services will actively encourage their caseloads to go on and look at education programs and just give them the skills that they need to succeed in life. Then you've got things like housing needs and support with benefits. And that might come into play with things like offender workbooks. So these are things that you as a probation officer would help your caseload to complete. And they might include things like budget management and also things like anger management. So very much dependent on the crime that they've committed. Then you've got support the service user by getting them involved with social activities. So again, what probation officers will try and do is they will try and encourage people on their caseload to take up new activities, new hobbies, to help them, you know, get a general interest. And that way it's hoped that they will start to build those more positive peer associations and perhaps move away from those negative associations with people that they might have been mixing with previously. And finally there, they might be able to offer guidance, patience and understanding. So this goes back to the point that I raised at the beginning of the presentation, and that was about having those people skills. And I think that's one of the kind of take-home messages really, is that if you're thinking about becoming a probation officer, you have to have the patience, the understanding and the empathy, because it's very much a people person role. You're working day to day with, you know, some very complex individuals who really do need that guidance and support. And so this is certainly one of those careers whereby patience, understanding and empathy go a really long way. Okay, so that actually brings me to the end of my PowerPoint. So I think basically here, what I just want to say is that if you're thinking about applying with us at Glyndwr, and that's on any of our degree programmes, not just the criminology programme, but if you're thinking of coming to study with us, then it's certainly worth you taking down the phone number, also the website for Glyndwr University. And so what we're, you know, encouraging students to do is reach out. You know, if you're thinking about studying one of these degrees that I've talked about today, then do please get in touch with us. But also give us a follow on our social media as well. So we have a Twitter account there and also Facebook. So just follow us, see what we're getting involved with. We also often have a lot of events going on that we invite potential applicants along to. So, you know, feel free to follow us on our social media and get involved with those. And also have a look at our website, and on there you'll find a variety of things. So we are running a number of courses at the moment, so introductory courses which give you a taster really. So they give you a taster of university life, but also a taster of what it's like to study on the degree programme. So that might be something as well that interests you. So currently we have our short course, which you might be interested in, which is our Notorious Crimes and Criminals course. And what we find is a lot of the students who enrol on that short course, they tend to then, they love it so much that they'll come to study with us at Glyndwr because they've had a taster of what it's like to be part of that community of learning at Glyndwr. So have a look at our website for details about short courses. And also there's our open days. So we have a number of open days that run throughout the year. Some of those are virtual, online open days. And we also have those face-to-face on-campus open days as well. So again, if you're thinking about coming to study with us at Glyndwr, do come along to one of those events, and you can put any of your questions or queries that you've got about the degree programmes to us, and you know, we would love to see you there. Okay, so that brings me to the end. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions at all about the case study or about the degree?
That's brilliant, Joe. Thank you ever so much. We'll, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat. And what we've done, we just followed you on Twitter as well. We have a Twitter page at Radyr Sixth Form, so we'll sort of follow you as well. And I sort of tweeted as well that you need it and that. I would also say to the students, look, check out, you know, when we have guest speakers, follow them on Twitter. Can you get up-to-date information about all the news and events that are taking place in terms of that? You know, you said about the short course, Joe. Is that like a MOOC, or is that a course that you would be an in-person course? Is that delivered online?
So that is, it's completely online, 100% online. And at the moment, the course is running for 10 weeks, but we are looking at changing that ever so slightly. So I think we're potentially, don't quote me on this, but I think we're reducing it by a couple of weeks. So it's likely to be an 8-week course. But we run that throughout the year. I think, we're on cohort 5 or 6 now. So it's quite a popular short course. And as I said before, it's quite a good one because it gives you some insight into some of those more notorious crimes and criminals and how the criminal justice responds to that. So yeah, it's a taster really of what it's like to study firstly at Glyndwr, but also to understand, you know, higher education and what it entails really. So it's a fun one, a very popular one actually.
Brilliant. So and that's obviously going to, no, I was going to say that's going to give you lots of experience, lots of material around a personal statement, and also show you if you enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got a question here. So what work experience would you recommend as being beneficial? That's a good question, actually. We do encourage our students to get involved with work experience. So I think if you're thinking about that now, that's really good. So I think anything really in terms of probably the voluntary sector is the best place to look for work experience. So places like victim support, it might be some of the drug and alcohol services. You know, there's lots of different things in and around the area that you can look into. And I think anything really that where you're working with people. And that's the key thing. It's such a people-focused discipline that we'd be encouraging you to get any kind of experience where you're kind of hands-on, working with people potentially who have, you know, issues in their life, you know, some of those social deprivations. So yeah, just anything where you're working with people really is a good area to look at in terms of work experience. So next question there is, what would you be looking for in a candidate when reading UCAS statements? So we'd be looking at your personal experiences. So any of those kind of extracurricular things that you're getting involved with. So societies or clubs, it could be that you're interested in sports, anything like that. So any kind of sort of team building exercises or hobbies that you're involved with. We'll also be looking at things like your interests. So tell us what it is that interests you, and also tell us what it is that draws you towards a degree in criminology and criminal justice, or indeed one of our other degrees. Tell us what it is that, you know, you're passionate about, and also, you know, where you hope to see yourself in 5 years' time and even in 10 years' time. So give us an idea of what you're going to do if you come and study with us on that degree programme. Those are kind of some of the key things that we tend to look at within UCAS statements. So, you know, firstly, personal experience, hobbies, interests, and obviously career aspirations, and what it is that motivated you to apply for the degree.
Fab. We have a lot of students in year 12 that are here tonight, and and after their exams, they'll be doing their individual project for their Welsh Bac. And I'd imagine this would be quite a good topic area to do, because they can pick any topic they want to investigate or research. And obviously, if you're interested in criminology, you're interested in law, you're interested in the factors why people commit crime or the criminal justice system, it would be quite a good area of study in terms of that. What would be some good resources you'd say that a Year 12 student could check out if they were doing some research?
So I think probably I'd direct the students towards some of our recommended reading, and certainly that's going to help them firstly with their studies at the moment, but also when they go into the degree. So one of the sort of key texts that we recommend is Tim Newburn's Criminology book. So it is rather a heavy textbook, but it's just absolutely jam-packed with a wealth of information about the criminal justice system, but also some of those wider issues that we pick up on within the curriculum. So things like, what we've discussed today. So desistance, criminological theories, sort of all that underpinning knowledge that you're going to need within your criminology degree. And I'd say that those key texts are probably a good starting point, actually, and they'll get you well on your way to completing your studies now, but also later on in your degree.
Fab. You know what, obviously, when you're looking at things that are wrong with the criminal justice system and how things could be improved, you probably look overseas at countries that might be doing it better. For a Welsh Back project, it's often quite good to do a comparison, right? Are there any countries that do things very different to us and obviously seem to be doing better that they would look at?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take you back to my PhD thesis here. So particularly in and around the area of prisons, the UK and Wales especially are very, very much focused on drawing on Scandinavian principles. So prisons in the UK, and as I say, HMP Berwyn, who's our local prison in Wrexham, have pretty much modelled their design and their approach on these Scandinavian principles. So it's termed Scandinavian exceptionalism. And the basis here is that they look towards countries like Norway and Sweden and Finland as the kind of archetypal, success stories, if you like, where imprisonment is concerned. And the reason that they look towards those countries is because they're doing so very well with their prisons. And what I mean by doing so very well is that they have very rehabilitative approaches, and these rehabilitative approaches are paying dividends in the fact that people are leaving the prison service in these countries, in places like Norway and Sweden, and they're going out and leading very law-abiding, natural lives. And the tendency here is that they're not going on to commit crime. So the recidivism rate in these Scandinavian countries is very, very low. And so we're looking to replicate that almost in the UK here. But obviously we have a very different country. We have a different set of societal norms and rules, and so that is quite difficult to achieve, but we're certainly taking inspiration from those countries, and that is because they are doing things in a much more progressive and more liberal stance.
Fab. And if anyone's doing a Welsh Back project on this, it'd be a really good area to investigate and look at the figures and how the percentage of people reoffending and why Wales is looking at Norway and Sweden and places like that to sort of get ideas, really. No, that's great. So are there any more questions, everyone? And if there's not, what I will say is, if you do think of questions later, I can always pass them on to Joe or whatever. And also, we'll record this and put it on our YouTube channel as well. And if you have any questions, just email me and I can pass them on. And please don't forget to follow the Twitter site, and I've followed them. So if you're on our Radyr Sixth Form thing, you will see that I've already followed them. So you can find the web link there, the Twitter site, and obviously you've got a Facebook page as well. Have you got, when is the open days? Obviously they've been virtual recently, but have you been face-to-face?
We have got an on-campus one. I think, again, don't quote me here, I'm pretty certain it's the 26th of Feb.
Okay.
So details of that will be on our website, but I'm pretty certain we do have an on-campus one coming up very soon. So yeah, I think it is the 26th of Feb, but just make sure to check the Glyndwr website for details of that.
Fab, and that could coincide very nicely with half term, and you could go for a nice trip up to beautiful Wrexham, and then also do some visit Liverpool and places like that, which are very near.
They are indeed, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So thank you so much, Joe. We really appreciate you giving up your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you ever so much. We'll follow you on Twitter, and I thought the talk was fab, and we'd love to sort of work with you again in the future. And I'm sure our criminology department, our psychology department would definitely like to get in touch with you and sort of work with you on stuff and projects.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, that the feeling's mutual. We're here to support you. So very much looking forward to working with you in the future.
And we have, as I said, Criminology is becoming very popular at Radyr. We have we launched it for the first time. I think it's we've got our first cohort in year 13 now, and it's becoming a major subject at Radyr really. And we've got loads of people doing psychology, multiple groups for criminology. So I'm really pleased it's taken off.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight, and I'll see you all in school tomorrow. Thanks, Joe. Thanks. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Okay,
bye,
thank
everyone.
you.